Jaire Alexander is no longer a member of the Green Bay Packers. What does this mean for the team going forward? We will discuss that on today's episode.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back into another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend here is Rob Ralph. As always, thanks to any new and returning listeners. We have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, like, follow, get those notifications, give us 5-star reviews. Whatever you do in regards of that really helps us out a lot. And we'd really appreciate it. Here we are. We're excited to be talking Packers football again. But this is probably the biggest news of the offseason, and it's not necessarily a great thing for the Green Bay Packers. It may be a great thing for the Green Bay Packers, but I know that a lot of people are not all that excited about it. But how are you feeling, Rob, in the aftermath of the news that Jaire Alexander was cut and is no longer a member of the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, I mean, I figured, this might happen. I have no doubts that the Packers, and it's already reported, right? We're working on some trades. Some of these other teams would not take on Jaire's full contract with all the money. Then the Packers tried to smooth things over, give him a restructured deal. Who knows what the exact details were of that deal, whether that was pennies on the dollar, more than a few $1 million saved, whatever it was. He scoffed at that. Actually had a pretty savvy move, telling them that he was going to be reporting to mandatory minicamp, right? And so then the Packers would be on the hook if he were to get injured. So I think him and his agent definitely played this pretty well. I feel good about this. Like, if you all remember from last year, the back half of the year, we did not have Jaire Alexander, and I felt like we were rounding into form. I think that the thing that this gives me the most concern with is outside of like your true starters, more of your back end cornerback depth is where I could see us maybe possibly having some issues. But you think about it this way too, right? You lose Eric Stokes. He goes out and you basically upgrade and insert Nate Hobbs for whatever that's worth, right? So there's a little bit of upgrade there too. But yeah, I feel good about this. Jaire Alexander did not play that much the last couple of years. Yes, when he does play, he is an elite talent. I will also be extremely shocked if a team gives him his full contract that he currently has, but you never know. There's a lot of teams out there that like to make some moves like that. So not surprised. I know we'll get into a little bit of the money and what this means for the Packers, but how do you feel about it, Jordan?
Oh, a little bittersweet, I think. Like you said, we've been talking about this for more than 4 months. The season ends with press conferences. He doesn't have anything good to say. I mean, you knew the relationship was pretty much over at that point in time. A couple weeks ago, I actually think on the show said that I believed he would be back because I just didn't have a possible other outcome for, of course, now the Packers get the cap savings for this year, next year, which I think is the big benefit of this whole situation. And I'm on board with that. We'll talk about this more, but there are ample people who are going to need to get paid next off season. But I still have question marks, as we've talked about in some of our previous episodes. Whether it was reviewing Gouda's track record or following the draft. If you kind of knew this was going to end in divorce, really all we did was add Nate Hobbs and Micah Robinson and a couple UDFAs, and I agree with your point, Rob. Like, I feel like the group that we had that's staying did play well in the back half of last season, and we weren't a bad unit. I mean, worst case scenario, we're like a middle tier unit, and I think our safeties and hopefully if we have more pass rush can help us with that. I do worry in the event that like a Nate Hobbs has an injury though, that we're not in the best position in terms of top end talent. And while there be bodies, we could be a little bit exposed, So But we'll talk a little bit more about what some of our options are, who might fill some of these roles for us, even who might be an option or two left available in free agency. So, just a couple quick facts about the money. I found a couple fascinating things in here as we talk about that. So most of this is out there and you've probably seen it, but they save the base salary for this year and next year, along with the game bonuses, and workout bonuses. So in total, the Packers will save about 17.12 million of cap space for this coming season, and something like, where's the number here? It's going to be like closer to 20 million dollars in cap space next year. What that really means is, I don't know. They have a plethora of money right now. They're in a great position. Next year's cap, they weren't in a great position. They were set to be about $11.73 million in the hole. Now they'll probably have about $6 or $7 million of projected room. But for those of you who aren't like super familiar with the NFL salary cap, you can roll over unused cap for a period of time, because I think it accounts 2 or 3 year spending. So right now, I think they're projected to have the fourth most cap going into next year, um, which is about $45.43 million. And I think, depending on how you figure a few other things out, that wiggle room might get them close to 50. So they are going to have some money to spend. And we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but they've definitely got some dudes to spend it on. So money things aside, so what's left in this room, Rob? Do you want to talk a little bit about the makeup of the cornerback room without Jaire Alexander? Kind of talk about who might fill what role.
Yeah, I mean, who's left? Obviously, outside guys: Hobbs, Nixon, Valentine, Bugs Bunny Brown, DFA, Isaiah Dunn, free agent. Then for slots: Bullard, King, Haddon, Robinson, and then Jonathan Baldwin. So, I think Haddon is obviously going to be a prime candidate. King last year, he's already a year into the system. I think that those would be the primetime ones. And then you could have some more back end kind of filling it out with either, Robinson, who was a draft pick from this last year, or your Bugs Brown, Jonathan Baldwin, Isaiah Dunn, to kind of round out that kind of real back end cornerback depth if you got, real injured this year. But I would think the immediate kind of contributors: King, Haddon, and Robinson, I think would be kind of the three main pieces that would come in immediate for any sort of injury, depending on how training camp rolls out in competition.
Yeah, so assuming in that scenario, I mean, your three starters I would project right now is, so Hobbs and Nixon pretty much have to play on the outside. Recently at OTAs, they were playing Hobbs in the slot, right? And I think you can do that when you have Jaire, and that's probably Hobbs's most natural position, but he does have that outside versatility, and I think he's going to be immediately pegged to play on the outside right now. It's like funny, because your two best outside corners now are probably, maybe, best suited to play the slot. But, Jeff Hafley keeps preaching this versatility, and now they're going to have to play outside. And I really hope that bet plays off, that those guys can play outside. Javon Bullard, a couple weeks ago, you're kind of looking from the outside in, a second round draft pick from last year. Well, what is this guy's opportunity to play now? Evan Williams has won a starting job. You have McKinney. You sign Hobbs. Okay, so now you have a second round draft pick who might, without injury, not have a lot of access to many reps. That's obviously remedied in the aftermath of this situation. So, like I feel okay about the three outside guys. We have to see how Hobbs plays in this system. We hope that Valentine makes a little bit of a step in year 3. I think there's a lot of teams that would not have a quality third option like Valentine behind their starters. So I feel okay about that. I'm still just worried about the top end talent. I don't know that we have a shutdown guy in this group. And when we play a team like the Eagles, when we have to go against the Minnesota Vikings and somebody else has got to cover Jordan Addison now, obviously maybe Nate Hobbs will just, with his versatility, maybe they'll just shuttle a guy like Hobbs on Jordan Addison, and maybe that's a perfect fit. But I don't know. I have questions that are only going to be answered by seeing the play on the field at this point.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I totally understand that. But I just keep coming back to last year and how we were playing without Jaire Alexander, who is our, shut down corner. And we were giving a lot of teams some fits. Now, granted, yes, the Jordan Addison, you know, the remark too of putting Bullard in there too, specifically down on the slot. You just have the opposing team just do man crossers to death, and Bullard gets absolutely killed. That's what is kind of tonight. I believe he's just not fast enough. Definitely a lot better and run packages, getting in there around the line of scrimmage. So I totally understand, and really to me, like Hobbs as well, like he has an injury history. It's not, I don't know if it's quite as bad as Jaire Alexander, but he missed quite a bit of games too. So you know that you're gonna have to get some contribution from, 2, 3, possibly even 4 of these guys on the back end. So actually, what it really comes down to me is the coaching. Can you get the most out of this kind of group without, uh, you know, I don't know why I want to say like Jalen Ramsey, but like a couple of shut down corner names, Jaire Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, whoever it might. I think that will be kind of a key factor this year is how much we can get of this coaching to get out of this team. So
That's a great point, and I mean, I think Jeff Hafley's a great guy to do that. That is his specialty, right? Is the technique and the detail with the cornerbacks and the secondary, and that's his bread and butter. So hopefully he can maximize the talent that we have on this roster. We haven't talked a lot about Kamal Hadden on this team. We've slept in this podcast before. We've slept on him a little bit, but I do find he's an interesting prospect who's going to compete for a fifth or a sixth, cornerback position on this team. But he's drafted, in 2024 by the Chiefs. He was cut after training camp. They didn't have a place for him. Was picked up by the Packers. Was elevated twice, once in week 4 and once in week 9 last year. So, according to his NFL.com profile, he's got strength outside, he's got sticky feet on start and stop in the vertical phase. He tracks and adjusts to the deep ball well and catches it in space, anticipates and breaks off man coverages and breaks up throwing lanes, and he attacks perimeter blocks on quick screens. So, all the indications of that is that he's a physical player. He's 6'1", 192, so he certainly has the size that the Packers typically covet to potentially be an outside guy. It wouldn't surprise me now that these moves have happened if they try to start really grooming him on the outside more specifically. I think the knock on Hadden is that he is a little bit slower. He runs a 4.57. So, he's going to have to rely on his physicality and pushing guys to the boundary. His profile doesn't say slot to me at all. So, I'm going to be interested to see what he looks like in mini camp and training camp this year. So, like the one thing you said to me a minute ago stood out is like, what's the deal with Bullard and on those crossers or whatever? I don't think it's a lack of speed. I think it's a lack of processing time more than anything, because, he was asked to like try to learn, safety, play in the box. And then now I have to play this slot rule, the star rule. I got to move back and forth. I think hopefully if they just like get his mind right there and he doesn't have to think about playing on the back end, that he'll react a little bit better this coming season. I guess that's just my hopeful take on it.
yeah, I mean, definitely that. But at least in my opinion, I saw him more than a few times get burned pretty good. And it makes sense, right? Like a lot of those speedy wide receivers, Addison is very fast. And who else was he on? Brian Thomas Jr. cooked him too. He's also a burner, as well. Not to say that he's not like fast. He's just not like fast, 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 So you're right. I don't think it's like, I think it's both for sure. Yeah, totally agree with yours.
Well, then Brian Thomas also probably has like 4 inches on him too, because isn't he like 6'3" or 6'4"? I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be a problem for a lot of dudes in this league for a very long time. He's a hell of a football player. I wish we had some Brian Thomas Jr. on our team. So, we've talked about the guys we have. There are a few free agents available. Is there anybody, on the free agent list that stands out to you that you would consider signing a small 1-year deal to help fill this hole? You got anybody that you like?
I mean, everybody's going to point to, and we're not showing you the list, but Rasul Douglas is on here. Obviously we have some familiarity with him. That one might be okay. Asante Samuel Jr. all the way down here, very, very reasonable, and trying to get him, at least from what I'm seeing, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, they're projecting. So the three guys that I see are, Rasul Douglas, Mike Hilton, and Asante Samuel Jr. There are a variety of other names, James Bradbury. Kendall Fuller might not be a bad option. I'm not out on Kendall Fuller on a 1-year deal. I think that he would actually fit well on this team. But, Stephon Gilmore, I think he's aged out. Not really sure about CJ Henderson's talent, if he really brings anything more than what we have on here. Shaq Griffin, I'm not really into him. There's a variety of other guys. Asante Samuel Jr. is a really interesting guy because he was injured last year. I think he only played 3 or 4 games. He didn't have a lot of snaps. Didn't grade out very well, but you'd expect that on a guy who was injured. He had an outstanding 2023 season.
Young.
Yeah, he's only 25 years old. He would fit as a guy that the Packers would probably love to sign, and if you get him into the system, and then you could give him an extension if that works out. I'm not sure that he's like a true outside guy either, though. He's a little bit smaller in stature. You sign him, he's probably another Nate Hobbs, slot first, outside maybe kind of guy. So like from that fit, I'm not sure if that works out either. So, I certainly think that they could take a 1-year swing on Kendall Fuller, Rasul Douglas, or Mike Hilton. But, Rasul Douglas didn't have a great season last year either. And if it wasn't for our past memories of him being a Packer and the play that he had, I'm not sure that we'd have a strong connection to him right now. But I'd be open to a 1-year reunion. Like, let's just say there's not a market for him and you could get him for a $5 million 1-year deal. Sure, bring him in. Let's let him compete on the outside. And I feel pretty good about the depth on this roster then.
Yeah. I would as well. We'll see. I mean, now they have some cap space. I mean, they still had a little bit from before, but this just makes it a lot better. I wouldn't be shocked if Gutekunst pulled a move like that. It'd be pretty savvy kind of Brian Gutekunst move too as well.
So, a couple other notes here. I think we've kind of talked about it but like, in your opinion, Rob, who does this create the most opportunity for? Is it a guy like Bullard? Is that the natural thing, or do you think that there's somebody else that benefits from Alexander being cut the most?
It's a good question. Valentine, kind of wanted to say a little bit. He plays a lot more on the outside. He is a little bit lengthier. Can get beat by some of your physical type of wide receivers and or tight ends. But initially, I kind of want to say Valentine, and then just in general with him losing Ja, I just think the back end depth will be a very intriguing thing to watch. All the storylines and narratives, at least through training camp, of who is performing or not performing well and why. Very, very curious to see how this kind of plays out. But to me, just even thinking about Hobbs and his injury history, I think Valentine is like kind of probably my key guy from this.
I like your thought process there. Like, I think the natural choice is Bullard, because we hope that he's a guy who can play in the slot, and that was a good use of that 2nd-round pick, right? But like, what if there's a world that they just brought Nate Hobbs in to be that slot guy for us because they wanted him to play that star role, and that's their preference anyways? And if that's the case, then it really does put the pressure on Valentine. Okay, it's Nixon and Valentine that are really the starters on the outside right now, and Bullard is your backup to Hobbs. And, I think without publicly saying it, Goody's insulated himself from picks that he hasn't liked that much before. Maybe Bullard needs more development, as you've alluded to. Maybe they just want that depth due to injury. But if Hobbs is just like their vision for the do it all slot nickel guy, and they like Bullard in the dime packages, then yeah, that creates a world of opportunity for Valentine to seize that starting position. So yeah, great points. So we're kind of to close this out, the fun speculation, but where do you think Jaire Alexander will land? And I hope it's not the Minnesota Vikings, but that's certainly not without the realm of possibility. I already see the Vikings, fans and Twitter clamoring for Jaire Alexander to come and play with his daddy, Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the banter.
that'd be funny for sure. Uh, I I This is hard, right? Crystal ball for sure. No way I would ever make a true bet on this, but the 49ers and Raiders are currently towards the top of that. Rams are up there too. That's a sweet destination. Same with the 49ers or Raiders, right? Las Vegas. Miami, I mean, these are all stellar destinations, right? The Miami Dolphins plus 600. Eagles, I guess I'd be a little bit shocked if he went to the Eagles, but again, I think to Jaire Alexander, who's going to give him the most money out of these teams, or whoever that is, I would think that he'll probably end up taking that.
Yeah, I probably think that he's probably going to be looking to get paid in his next deal. And I probably think that he's going to try to put himself in a position to win a championship this year, because I don't think anybody's really going to give him buku bucks. It's probably going to be a 1-year deal, because, I mean, who's going to give him a 4-year deal right now with his injury history?
Yeah, I
No,
don't know.
nobody, not a single team, right? So I think that puts some of these contenders in play. The Eagles have a surprising amount of money left to spend, and they could certainly, afford a 1-year, $12 million deal. Well, the Rams are in a similar position. The Rams have Devontae Adams now. Um, I'm sure, and obviously, they've got like 9-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. They're kind of a name in the NFC. They've got a great coach. They're young and upcoming. I mean, that's the one I kind of circle, other than the like traditional story as old as time, is like, well, I'm going to get my $12 million to have revenge on the Packers next year, and then I'll figure it out from there, because there's plenty of reason for him to go to Minnesota. I mean, all of there's so many stories of that, but Aaron Jones is there. Obviously they were, they bested the Packers last year. If they want him, there's a lot of reasons to go to Minnesota, but I like the Rams. My other candidates on this list, I know there was connections to Buffalo, but they simply don't have the money in a bidding war. I think that's why they were trying to trade and have the Packers take money on, because they're not going to be able to outright afford, 10 or $12 million. The other one that I circle that makes sense to me is Baltimore. Baltimore has enough money, I think, to get it done. Jaire Alexander played with Lamar Jackson at Louisville.
Nice connection.
Baltimore's secondary is atrocious outside of Kyle Hamilton. So, maybe that's the piece that they feel like they're missing to get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl in the AFC. So if he wants to win, I have the Rams or the Ravens circled as my two guest destinations.
Yeah, just don't go to the 49ers or Eagles, man. Like, or the Vikings for that matter. And now that this did happen, he's had this injury history. I mean, he's going to play all 17 games this year now, right? Like wherever he signs, that's just kind of how it's all going to probably fall. Like, he's going to have a shutdown year, a really good year. How ironic would that be? But yeah. The Rams.
It's gonna happen because, he last year, what incentive did he have to play through the little nicks and bruises, right? Like one way or
Yeah,
another,
right.
he was gonna make 17, or like, well, he's already making money, right? He was gonna make like 21 million or whatever this year and $24 million next year. That was money that he essentially had in the bank. Now he's gonna go play a 1 year deal, $10 million. That's nice, but he wants that next 4 year, $80 million deal. And the only way he's going to get that is to play through things and show teams he's tough and he's healthy. So
He's got to go out there and prove it and stay healthy. You are absolutely spot on. I hate to say it, man, but man, seeing him play well on a Brian Flores defense across the border, I mean, if he can stay healthy, right, to all your points you just made, that'd be very, very hard to watch, but it might be a really good fit for him just as far as like scheme and getting the best coach to be able to utilize his talent.
yeah, that one would hurt, also going up against the Rams in like the divisional round of the playoffs and having to watch Jaire cover any number of Packers wide receivers, name one at that point in time. That could hurt too.
Yep. Well, Packers fans, let us know what you think about today's episode. That is all that we have for you. Where did you think we were right? Maybe we were wrong at some points, whatever it might be. Make sure to leave us a comment. We love to engage with you guys. But that is it for today's episode. We do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. Make sure to tell a family, friend or two, and come on over to YouTube and subscribe if you are able. We are on the socials. I am at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olson Jord. But yeah, until next time, Packers Nation, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack, go.
Wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey.